This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast presented to you by ClutchPoints. Like, follow, and subscribe, rate us, review us, all that other fun stuff. My name is Sheldon Alexander, and we're going to be breaking down some NFL bets for the offseason. Yes, a few special episodes we got cooking up for you, so hopefully you stayed tuned to the feed. You've been liking and subscribing, and you're all over us because we got you covered this offseason. We're going to take a look at some futures in the NFL. We got some AFC/NFC bets, some Super Bowl bets, of course. We look ahead at some awards, and we'll also look ahead to the NFL draft. We got you covered. Make sure you stay tuned to the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast because we got all of that for you and more. So make sure you stay tuned to this, what we call the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast. All right, so as we keep things moving here on our off-season storylines on the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast, today we're going to talk about awards. I'm going to give you a Super Bowl pick because we teased that the last episode. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. And if you missed any of our other episodes, just make sure you scroll up in the feed wherever you happen to find this, Apple, Spotify, and of course YouTube, and make sure you get caught up. As we've talked about the NFL draft, we talked about AFC futures, NFC futures, and now we're going to talk about some awards because awards are also pretty fun to take a look at and see just how things are going to go. And at the end of this awards section, I'm going to talk Super Bowl because I promised that, right? I promised that. And I like to fulfill said promises, right? All right. So first award that we want to talk about here is MVP, NFL MVP. And we got Lamar Jackson at plus 550, Josh Allen at plus 550, Joe Burrow at plus 650, Patrick Mahomes at plus 750. Now, super interesting stuff here because if you take a look at some of these numbers, right? Obviously, we know Josh Allen won the award last season, edging out Lamar Jackson. You have a lot of people saying that should have been Lamar Jackson, but people were it's almost a thing where it's like the NBA, where you get voter fatigue and they didn't want to give it to Lamar Jackson again. And, it was kind of Josh Allen's time and people were anticipating this being the Bills' time. And it didn't really work out that way, but I still find it interesting because I feel like Lamar Jackson should have won the MVP last year. Right? But we get reminded of sometimes it's just a storyline. And people really fell in love with the Buffalo Bills last year. People fell in love with the storyline of the Buffalo Bills. And that added more to Josh Allen's MVP run, despite the fact that I think the real reason the Bills were good was because they had Josh Allen doing less, right? Less wilding from Josh Allen and more from Cook in the backfield, more just spreading out the offense, just short passes, short yards to gain, ball control, let their defense do their thing. But yet, Josh Allen ends up winning. So here we go again into this season. And I don't think Josh Allen is going to win MVP again. So I'm going to move him out of this discussion here at plus 550, right? I just think for you to win back-to-back MVPs, especially after the debate that was had last season, it would take him having, turning into the gunslinger Josh Allen again. And I don't think that's good for the Buffalo Bills. I think the Bills know that too. And I don't think that's good for Josh Allen. So let's remove that. So let's get to Lamar Jackson. Because again, I think Lamar Jackson put up the numbers last year over Josh Allen to win MVP. I also think that the Ravens, at certain points of the season, were just such a dominating team that you could have made the argument they were the best team in the AFC, the best team in the league. And if you're the quarterback leading the way on that team, you should win MVP, right? And it was weird to me that people use Derrick Henry as, a reason why Lamar Jackson's MVP case should be lowered, but they didn't do the same thing for James Cook and Josh Allen. I'll leave that to other people to discuss. I also think there's other reasons why there was a love affair with Josh Allen, but that's for another pod on another time. But I'll say this, Lamar Jackson will continue to be Lamar Jackson because he's just that dude. Their offense, even with Derrick Henry, took another step. It was incredible. Derrick Henry put in work, more work than I think most people would have assumed when you first heard that they would be getting Derrick Henry. And even with that all said, Lamar Jackson had a great season. Lamar Jackson had a great passing season. And listen, Zay Flowers goes down at the end of the year. Mark Andrews can't catch at the end of the year. And that really cost them. The Mark Andrews fumble, Mark Andrews, dropping the 2-point conversion. All of those things, while I know that doesn't affect Lamar Jackson's MVP case, what I'm saying is we've seen the steps taken from Lamar Jackson in winning time. And I think that overall, that does impact how people vote for MVP. I do feel like part of the reason why Lamar didn't win last year was because he'd won in years prior, and then he had a bad playoff game, or what people deem to be a bad playoff game. So then the next year, they held that past playoff performance against him, which is totally unfair. It doesn't make any actual sense because the award is for the previous regular season. But that's just not how the narratives are built and how people go about this stuff, right? So when I look at that, I think, okay, if Lamar comes back and has, similar numbers offensively, puts up the numbers, he could be back into that race. So you could talk me into him at plus 550. You could. But let's keep it moving here because I think my pick here, it's not Patty Mahomes, even though we know Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback in the league. Whether it's injuries, whether it's just style of play, and Andy Reid not really being one to go out and dummy teams, as people who follow my picks will know, the Chiefs don't really win by a lot. Bottom line, though, is I think Patrick Mahomes' numbers, he's more focused on wins than it is, hey, 4 touchdown games, that you saw in early Patrick Mahomes years, right? That leads me to Joe Burrow. That would be my pick for next year's NFL MVP. You already started to see the storyline, the campaign start to build where he had such a great finish to the season last year, where he put up such incredible numbers that people were trying to get him into last season's MVP race, which would have been a crazy feat considering like how good your team would need to be, right, for you to actually fully make it. But still, it was a topic of conversation. You had people talking about, oh, Joe Burrow's numbers are so good and their team is so bad, but look at what he's doing to drag this team into playoff contention. And this goes back to what I was saying about the storylines, right? How do the storylines from what we last saw impact what we're going to see? So if Joe Burrow has another good year with which, if he's healthy, Jamar Chase is healthy, all that should be a thing. I like Joe Burrow at plus 650 because people were already in the mindset of viewing him in that caliber of top quarterback, MVP quarterback. I like Joe Burrow here at plus 650. If I go down the list, though, and see some other sprinkles here, that would be interesting. Patrick Mahomes at plus 750. You know who else is at plus 750? Jaden Daniels. If you're talking storylines as well, in terms of what people enjoyed last year, Jaden Daniels had a coming out party that definitely will translate into more talk, more hype coming into this season. So I could see a lot of people wanting to sprinkle there. You got Jalen Hurts at plus 1,700. That's probably a stretch to me. I don't really see him getting that love. Justin Herbert, year 2 under Harbaugh, plus 1,800. Interesting. Jordan Love at plus 2,200. CJ Stroud at plus 2,500. A year after the hype machine was behind CJ Stroud, like you never believe. And he kind of let everyone down. He didn't play up to what everyone was thinking, but also there's a lot going on with their O-line. Their offense didn't really look the same that it did the year prior. Injuries then in his receiving core. How does he bounce back? At plus 2,500, though, that's a nice long shot for a bounce back if you're CJ Stroud. That's what I'd say anyways. But yeah, that's the MVP odds in terms of NFL awards. And we got a couple more awards that we're going to break down for sure, including Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, and Coach of the Year, and of course, the Super Bowl pick. But as mentioned, ready to win real money this March Mania tourney? Struggling to choose which team will pull off an upset? Forget about the teams. All you need to focus on are player stats to rack up big cash prizes with DraftKings Pick 6. And when it comes to massive payouts, DraftKings dunks all over the competition. Pick 6 is available in most states, including Missouri, California, Texas, Georgia, and more. Track your picks for a shot to win huge cash prizes. It's as simple as that. This March, there's nothing else that I would even assume to try other than DraftKings Pick 6. It's just been the best for me so far, so why switch up a good thing? Turn your March Mania knowledge into cash today. New players get $50 in Pick 6 credits instantly with just a $5 entry. Download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now and use code CLUTCH. That's code CLUTCH for new customers to play $5, get $50 in Pick 6 credits. Better payouts, bigger wins. Only with Pick 6 from DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 plus. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick 6 not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick 6 credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at pick6.draftkings.com/promos. All right, so let's race through a couple more of these things here. As we've got the NFL awards, we'll go to Offensive Player of the Year. We got Saquon Barkley at plus 650, Jahmyr Gibbs at plus 950, Jamar Chase at plus 1,000, Puka Nacua at plus 1,600. This is super interesting here. I feel like Saquon, people are going to fall in love with Saquon again. Saquon got paid. Big shouts to Saquon. Well earned too as well. The running back is back. You know, that was incredible for Saquon. Great to see. Jahmyr Gibbs, it'll be interesting because there's a lot of talk last season about the fact that when Montgomery was in, you know, you had the Sonic and Knuckles, I think was the nickname they had last year. And it was cool, right? It was a dual threat running back position. But at certain points of the year, it was like, wait, do you really need all that? Because sometimes you just give it to Jahmyr Gibbs and he's just taking it house, right? Or making some crazy explosive play that it's like, did we need Montgomery to run it for 4 yards, to run it for 5 yards, just to give it to Gibbs for him to bust a like 40-yarder? Like, is a Jahmyr Gibbs breakout season underway? It's interesting. And at plus 950 and this revamped love affair that everyone seems to have with running backs again, maybe super interesting at plus 950. Jamar Chase, we just talked about what happened last year with the connection with Joe Burrow, and Jamar Chase was just a man on a mission last year, right? He was absolutely unstoppable. That duo, you know, Chase and like for Jamar Chase, first off, to be able to put in that much work with T. Higgins also on his side, and they're both able to eat, right? I think that's a pretty incredible feat when you consider the fact that there's enough ball to get around. He was in a contract here. He tried to hold out. It didn't really work. And yet you have this situation where he put up so much numbers. And if it wasn't for Saquon Barkley and the Eagles, you easily could have talked me into Jamar Chase winning Offensive Player of the Year last year. That's how crazy of a season that he had, right? So if I'm looking at this list, I am interested to see what Puka does without Cooper Kupp. I know he puts in work. He put in work regardless, but I'm interested to see the next step in Puka Nacua, and also can he stay healthy, right? Because he ended up banged up a couple times last season as well, And now without Cooper Kupp, it's going to be even more important for him to stay healthy. So if we're looking at just the top 4 here, I like Jamar Chase at plus 1,000, right? I think that's pretty interesting here. I don't think they'll give Saquon it back-to-back years unless he just, goes for 2,000 yards or something like that. Jahmyr Gibbs, I need to know more about what the running back situation is going to be in Detroit. Like, is there going to be a commitment to just letting him cook even more? I don't know. But what I do know is that Jamar Chase cooks no matter what. Him and Joe Burrow, they just got some connection there where whether it's throwing the deep ball, whether it's just throwing it over the middle, somehow they just cook. If I'm looking for more sprinkles here for Offensive Player of the Year, CeeDee Lamb had a massive year at plus 2,000. He had a great year last year, and if not for Dak going down and the whole Cowboys season going down, obviously Justin Jefferson, you want to know who their quarterback is next year. That's huge. Then you're looking at things that could be bounce back years. Tyreek Hill at plus 3,000, right? Tyreek Hill had a massive down year last year. Can they revamp that offense and have him clicking again with Tua? Not really sure. Christian McCaffrey at plus 2,200. That just hurts my feelings to see, because I got to be honest with you, even as a Niners fan, I see Christian McCaffrey coming back and being okay, but I don't know if I see him coming back and being Offensive Player of the Year good. That's a lot there. That's a lot. But either way, that's the offensive rookie or Offensive Player of the Year. Let's switch things up and go to the Defensive Player of the Year odds. And, maybe I should have mentioned this earlier, but I didn't mention Joe Burrow last year Saquon was the Offensive Player of the Year last year. The Defensive Player of the Year last year was Patrick Surtain, which is very interesting, right? So with that knowledge, we look into our odds this season. And this season here, you got Aiden Hutchinson at plus 650, TJ Watt at plus 700, Myles Garrett at plus 700, Micah Parsons at plus 700. So you see the numbers here, and I find it very interesting. And it's funny, as I look up, see, this is what we do for you here on the pod, right? I'm looking up, and as I look back at the odds have literally changed from the start of this pod to while I'm doing it right now. So I'm going to change these odds on the fly here, and it's got Myles Garrett at plus 700, right? We got Aiden Hutchinson at plus 700. Well, the odds are changing, kids. TJ Watt is now plus 850, right? Changing it on the fly. Look at the work here by the control room. This is what, this is what we love here. Micah Parsons at plus 750. So look at this. Updated odds. You got the numbers here. This is what we do here, right? Aiden Hutchinson plus 700. Myles Garrett plus 700. TJ Watt plus 850. Micah Parsons plus 750. Those are your top guys there. You got Will Anderson Jr. at plus 1,200. Nick Bosa's at plus 1,600. Of course, again, the odds provided by DraftKings. Make sure you check the odds, because the odds change, as you just witnessed while we're doing the pod live. But as I look at this, right, Aiden Hutchinson obviously coming off injury, people would love that storyline to just see him bounce back, because it was such a deflating injury. Even if you're not a Lions fan, it was still so deflating to see him go down like that. And I think that was a tough one for people to see. So to have him bounce back, and if he has a year that's similar to a bunch of these other guys, you could see him getting the vote for Defensive Player of the Year. Myles Garrett, his odds are dependent on, is he still in Cleveland, or is he going to go to another team and do the same amount of work? Because if he does the work that he was doing for the Browns for a contender, I mean, you might as well give him that before the season starts, right? That's just what I see from that. TJ Watt, can the Steelers be enough? I mean, at the end of the day, it's almost like he gets that award if the Steelers maintained how good they were last year, right? Like the Steelers kind of fell off last year. He kind of struggled towards the end of the season last year. So how's that going to play out? And, the team success, I'll also equate that to Micah Parsons as well. If Dallas just has such a nothing season again, and I know he's coming off injury as well, it's going to be tough for them to make it. So if I'm looking there at who's going to win, I like Myles Garrett because I think Myles Garrett's going to be super motivated. I don't feel like if I'm the Browns, why am I keeping him? So by the time you listen to this, he might be on a different squad, but I like Myles Garrett at plus 700 there. That's what I enjoy. That's what I like. That's my pick there. Let's quickly get to coach of the year here. And for coach of the year, you got Ben Johnson. Well, first off, let me check and make sure that these odds are still, the same as when we did this, when we wrote this before the pod started. So coach of the year, you got Ben Johnson at plus 550, Mike Vrabel at plus 650, Sean Payton at plus 1400, Pete Carroll at plus 1400. Super interesting stuff there because you got a bunch of new coaches, right? Obviously, Ben Johnson, Mike Vrabel, Pete Carroll, all very interesting. And then Sean Payton, who I think that's in anticipation of do the Broncos take another leap? Because they took a massive leap last year. And, when that happens, that's a good boost for the coach of the year odds. And Kevin O'Connell won coach of the year last season. And again, that was for being the surprise team. No one expected the Vikings to be as good as they were, but there you go. The Vikings end up making the moves. They end up playing so well last year that it was enough for Kevin O'Connell to win another coach of the year. Now, if I look towards next year, this obviously comes down to when you're looking at the coaches at the top, right? Because you got a bunch of coaches in brand new places. And I think if I look at, for Pete Carroll to be up here, to be one of the top 5, right? Jim Harbaugh rounds out the top 5 at plus 1600. But if I'm looking at Pete Carroll here, it's like, wait, what does that say that you think the Raiders are going to be next year? Like, I find that pretty interesting. It's like, is there something I'm missing here? Like, is there just more that the Raiders are going to be able to improve? And, are they, for you to be ahead of Jim Harbaugh, right? And Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers, does that mean the Raiders could potentially be better than the Chargers? And if that's the case, yeah, I could see that argument. But if Jim Harbaugh has yet another good year, right? Like, that's where it almost becomes weird because it's like, if the Chargers win that division, does Harbaugh get nixed or if they finish like close to the top, but they just lose out to the Chiefs again in terms of winning the division I'm talking about, right? Does Harbaugh get nicked because, he didn't make as big of a leap, right? Like, because of last year's leap, you've already saw the progression as opposed to a coach that just comes in and, you're not expecting anything from the Minnesota Vikings. And then they're one of the best teams in the league and almost win their division. Do you know what I mean? The latter example, which we just saw last year, is what you're more likely to see. So then it comes down to, which team do I think is more likely to have the turnaround, right? Is it going to be Pete Carroll? Is it going to be Pete Carroll and the Raiders? Is it going to be Mike Vrabel? Is it going to be Mike Vrabel and the Patriots? Or is it going to be Ben Johnson, who now heads to Chicago to take over the Bears? And I don't know what to make of the Bears. I'm going to be very honest with you. The Bears were a very weird team last year, and I know that they were poorly coached, but I also don't know how good of a coach Ben Johnson's going to be. I mean, Ben Johnson, his playbook is deep, right? Like, he was bringing out all the trick plays all the time, and maybe a little too much. And how's that going to match up with Caleb Williams, who also sometimes likes to do a little too much? I feel like I got to see how that combination works together before I fully pile in on Ben Johnson here. So what I do like from the top 4 is Mike Vrabel. I sort of alluded to it if you listen to our previous pods in which we've been breaking down the NFL offseason odds. When we were talking about the AFC, I mentioned how much I like the Patriots, right? And that has a lot to do with Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel proved with the Tennessee Titans that he is a really, really good coach. And I get, that sometimes if you butt heads with the GM or ownership, you might end up on the way out. I understand that. I get that. But I also feel like that's not what good organizations do. Good organizations realize that if you have a really good coach, your job is to just help that coach succeed. Mike Vrabel is in a spot where obviously he's familiar with the Patriots, having played for the Patriots before. So you're familiar with the crafts. And now you walk into a scenario where you saw glimpses of a team that had a little something, something there. So he's going to come, he's going to bring some culture, some stability there, which they might not have had much of last year, but also a second year QB who showed that he's kind of ready for prime time a little here in Drake May. So if you're telling me which one do I like in terms of these four, it's definitely Mike Vrabel at plus 650. That would be my pick. That would definitely be my pick at plus 650. As I continue to look at, some other sprinkles here, you got Dave Canales at plus 1600, got Liam Cohen and Duval. Is that a good impression? Did I do that well? At plus 1800, Dan Campbell at plus 2000, Mike McDonald at plus 2200, Aaron Glenn at plus 2200. I mean, there's a lot going on here, but I don't want to go too far down the list there, but it's super interesting stuff when you look at the coach of the year odds. Give me, though, Mike Vrabel at plus 650. I like it. Patriots turnaround, Patriots bounce back, Patriots getting spicy in the AFC East. I like it. So I mentioned earlier, as we did our offseason storylines pod, we've talked about the draft. We've talked about the AFC futures, the NFC futures. We picked awards for the MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Coach of the Year. I can't leave you without talking about the Super Bowl odds. And so Super Bowl odds, you got the Philadelphia Eagles at plus 650, the Chiefs at plus 700, the Bills at plus 700, the Ravens at plus 700, the Lions at plus 850, and the Niners at plus 1400. The Bengals plus 1800. I'm mentioning that because I would sprinkle on the Bengals. I do like that at plus 1800. I do like the Eagles to make it back at plus 650, just because, again, everything I laid out earlier, I think they built an institution where they run the ball, they play defense. Fangio really brought stability to their defense, which helped, and Saquon brought stability to their offense, which helped. And so if you just follow that playbook again with a weaker division, that helps you get a higher seed, which helps your odds in making the Super Bowl. So give me them at plus 650. Kansas City, I don't think they'll be back next year. The Bills, I could see them taking a step back. So I like the Ravens at plus 700. I like the Ravens still and just their infrastructure and what they do year in, year out. And if we're talking sprinkles, I mentioned Cincinnati at plus 1800. We're going a little further down the list. I mean, the Chargers are interesting at plus 2,800. I got love for Harbaugh. The Broncos appear to be building something there. And I got to admit, it took me a while to fully trust it, but there's something there. There's definitely something there. Plus 3,500 to win the Super Bowl might be a little too much. So if you're asking me, give me the Ravens at plus 700 as my first pick, the Eagles at plus 650. And then if I'm going for a deep shot, a sprinkle, give me the Cincinnati Bengals at plus 1,800. I mean, we went through a lot of offseason storylines. People talk about, the NFL, it's the offseason. What is there? Is there stuff to talk about? Is there stuff to bet on? Of course there is. So we got you covered here on the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast. Let me know what you think in the comments, whether it was about what we just talked about here in terms of the award season, or it's about the AFC, NFC futures, or the draft. Send your comments in and we'll read them because that's what we do. So, you got all the info now. You know where to find the pod. So if you missed any of our other off-season storyline, future picks, or bets, just scroll up. You'll be able to find them all and let us know what you think. That wraps up another episode of our look at some of the off-season futures. Don't forget to stick to the feed. for the next deep dive of what we got in terms of trying to find some NFL value into the offseason. If you missed anything before, just hit like, follow, and subscribe. Scroll up a little and you'll be able to find all the other pods because we got you covered, whether it's Apple, Spotify, or on YouTube. Clutch Picks Betting Podcast. My name is Sheldon Alexander. You can find me live on Instagram or the app formerly known as Twitter. You can find me on both places. On Instagram, it's at Sheldon Alexander. On Twitter, it's at Shell Alexander. I always say I used to pray for times like this to rhyme like this. This is the Clutch Picks Betting Podcast. As always, unpolished and unapologetic. Until next time, see ya.